Please clap.
So, earlier this year, I finally cracked down, opened up Netflix, and watched Neon Genesis Evangelion. And yeah, it's pretty damn good. But while I really enjoyed Evangelion, there was something that didn't sit well with me every time I started an episode and heard the first few notes of the opening. Now, there's nothing wrong with Cruel Angel Thesis, and it's iconic for a reason. But over the years, the stuff surrounding the song has completely transformed it. It's genuinely really hard to listen to Cruel Angel Thesis without thinking about at least one thing that spawned from it. So let's talk about why that's the case and go over how a Cruel Angel Thesis became a meme. Wow, that sounded terrible. Remind me to never add a title drop to a script again. For any given anime, the opening is going to be the first impression for a lot of viewers, kind of like how thumbnails are for YouTube videos. Let's just say there's a reason that a lot of OPs have better animation than the actual anime they're attached to. When your half-hour time slot starts and viewers are flipping through channels, you need something that can hook them in. And a Cruel Angel Thesis definitely hooked a lot of people in. As an opening, Cruel Angel Thesis had two jobs, being a good song in general, and also highlighting some of Ava's deeper elements. Needless to say, this opening succeeded on both fronts. Also, just a quick heads up, I'm not an expert on music theory, cinematography, religious symbolism, or anything like that, so my analysis here is probably gonna be really surface level. If you want an in-depth analysis on every single frame of the animation, there's like 2 billion better places you can go. For the first of the OP's two jobs, all you need to do is listen to it once and you can tell that it succeeded. Music taste is subjective and all, but if I called this song a banger, most people would agree. Interestingly enough, the original plan for the opening was to use one of Alexander Borodin's classical compositions, but this plan was quickly thrown out in favor of a more typical J-pop opening. Although typical isn't really the best word to describe Cruel Angel's Thesis, because this is where the second job comes in. There's so many elements of the opening that give you the impression that Evangelion is going to be something deeper. For starters, there's the lyrics of the song. On top of how they relate to Shinji's main internal conflict, lyricist Neko Oikawa was specifically told to word them in a sophisticated and philosophical manner. I mean, I'm not really the best judge of how sophisticated they are, considering the whole I don't speak Japanese thing, but hey, it's a thought that counts. And while there's a lot that can be said about the lyrics, even more can be said about the accompanying animation. There's so many hidden details that appear within the span of the opening's 92-second runtime. Of note is the animation's drop, which showcases a rapid sequence of images and gives a new viewer the impression that there's a lot more to this show than meets the eye. So with its accomplishment of the two aforementioned goals and its attachment to one of the most commercially successful anime of all time, it's no wonder that a Cruel Angel Thesis went on to leave an impact on pop culture. It placed high on a list of the most unforgettable anime openings. It won a record in 2010 for the amount of continued royalties that it generated. And most amusingly, it's so overplayed in Japanese karaoke venues that it's become infamous among karaoke goers. This pop cultural impact would undeniably translate to some form of an online presence. Even in the earliest days of YouTube and Nico Video, many videos relating to the song were published by Japanese Evangelion fans. There's live-action parodies of the OP. There's fan-made versions of it for other popular franchises. And most importantly, there's a video of a parakeet singing those iconic notes. But for a good while, these opening parodies were isolated to Japanese internet users. While Evangelion had a cult following in English-speaking countries, at least before it made it to Netflix, said cult following was not nearly as large as the franchise's mainstream success in its home country. That's not to say that none of these parodies were being produced by English speakers, though. One such example was created in April of 2008 by a YouTube user named Hadrijana. This now privated rendition of the opening replaced the visuals with ones from the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. Now, on its own, this video wasn't anything special, but 3 years later, it would inspire something much bigger.
The theme tune to an overrated anime. Someone shoot me, I'm already depressed.
For anyone familiar with anime content on YouTube, Little Karibo is a man who needs no introduction. He was the creator of Yu-Gi-Oh! The Abridged series, which spawned an entire genre of video. He's done a lot more though, and one small item on his massive resume is a video titled If Anime Were Honest Evangelion. This video took the visuals of how Trajana's Yu-Gi-Oh! Edit and combined them with a parody of the song written by Karibo himself and sung by his spouse, Marin Miller. It mainly exists to poke fun at the series, although a lot of its criticisms haven't really aged well.
How the hell did it do so well when the main character is totally gay?
Poorly aged parts of the early 2010s aside, this was a lot of English speakers' first exposure to parody videos. Naturally, some more would follow. There was one that performed the song with a bike horn. There was one that was a mashup with Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up. And there was one that replaced the lyrics with Snoop Dogg's Smoke Weed Every Day and changed the visuals to reflect the mashup. Now, this type of video would eventually become more common, but it's really hard to tell what caused this increase in popularity. This is because of a little thing called YouTube's bullshit content ID policy. You see, many Ava parodies have been taken down by two companies with the rights to the song, King Records and Studio Kara. This is really unfortunate, and the takedowns on important artistic works like Evangelion will undoubtedly be seen as the modern-day equivalent to the burning of the Library of Alexandria. But something that's specifically important to the video you're watching now is that it is impossible to definitively tell the history of the meme. There could potentially be multiple important pieces of the puzzle that got copyright claimed into oblivion. In fact, I was only able to do the research for this video with a combination of Wayback Machine and Know Your Meme's video gallery, so forgive me if I keep speaking in hypotheticals for the rest of the video. Anyways, based on my research, late 2014 was when the meme started to experience a moderate takeoff among English speakers. This was also when the basic template for the meme started to be adopted. Step 1. Take backgrounds and other assets from the original opening. Step 2. Combine these assets with assets from another pre-established meme. And finally, Step 3. Use keyframing and fade effects to emulate the style of the original. If you want to know what caused this template to emerge, there's two main possibilities. It's entirely likely that there was one video that was popular enough to inspire many similar edits, but I can't find many parodies from around or before 2014 that fit the bill. If this common ancestor video existed, it must have been deleted or copyright claimed. However, it's also entirely likely that most of these video makers just came up with the same idea independently, and that the meme went through some form of analogous evolution. Cruel Angel Thesis is one of the most well-regarded anime OPs, and it's natural that multiple people would want to parody it without seeing any parodies themselves. If this theory was true, then the reason the makers of these Ava parodies use similar techniques would be the natural result of using the same source as opposed to being inspired by each other. But once again, it could go either way. The meme's momentum continued into 2015. This year saw the creation of important cultural works such as Neon Genesis Evangelion and Neon Seinfeld Evangelion. And there's also some stuff worth noting outside of the specific branch of parodies that I've been focusing on. An internet user by the handle of Eagle A Burger made a Vine and later a full YouTube video that edited the opening song in a way that parodied the censored versions of anime from the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yo, shit, you get in the robot. It's not Eva, it's a robot. Don't eat a rice ball, eat a donut. Get inside that robot.
Even more notable was how the opening was parodied by a really unlikely source, Regular Show. Yeah, on April 9th, 2015, Regular Show had his 30-minute special that was a tribute to mecha anime. And in this episode, the typical Regular Show intro was replaced by a parody of a Cruel Angel Thesis. Now, I can confidently say that this intro had nothing to do with the Cruel Angel Thesis parodies that preceded it, but this is still an interesting footnote in the opening's history. And while Cruel Angel Thesis parodies saw a lot of big things in 2015, there was one video from that year that planted the seeds necessary for even bigger things to happen in 2016. Of all the Cruel Angel Thesis parodies, the one that broke the mold was a Cory in the House one by SquidGG. Also, wow, this aged horribly. It was originally uploaded in 2015, but by 2016 it would start to explode in popularity. In January of 2016, it had about 100,000 views, which was already a lot for these parodies. Then by September of the same year, it would reach the coveted million-view milestone. And this one video would cause even more parodies of the intro. It seemed like anything could be the topic of a Cruel Angel Thesis parody, whether it was Pokemon, Drake and Josh, or Brexit. The sky truly was the limit. But the big question is, why exactly did this specific parody cause an exponential trend? Well, it's a combination of 3 different factors. First, it was just really lucky. You can't get success on YouTube unless the algorithm decides to be nice to you for no reason in particular. I'm sorry to say, but there's no perfect technique for getting views and subscribers. It's not like it can just magically become successful by reminding you that only 5.2% of my viewers are subscribed, and that subscribing really helps out the channel. That aside, there's still 2 more factors to the video's success. One that helped it get off the ground in the first place, and one that helped it after it got that initial push from the algorithm. The former of the two relates to how, while other parodies were based on pre-established memes, this one was based on a pre-established meme that was specifically related to anime. Long story short, one person clickbaited horny anime fans into hearing the Cory in the House theme song, and now people call Cory in the House the best anime. So the video would have an easier time getting that initial exposure. However, the last big factor is something more broad: the gradual fusion of meme culture and anime culture. 2016 saw a lot of changes to the development of memes, but one of which was how it paved the way for anime to be incorporated in popular memes more often. And while there were genuine anime memes like the to be continued sign, most of the anime memes around this time existed to poke fun at anime and its fans. One notable example was when popular YouTuber Filthy Frank published a video mocking a Naruto opening. Then another user named Rinkin made an animated version of this video that blew up. So it would make sense for other meme videos related to anime and anime open specifically to get an increase in exposure. And so, A Cruel Angel Thesis flourished as a meme in 2016. The song had its time in the spotlight and became a beloved meme, even among people who don't watch anime. Unfortunately, this spotlight would eventually have to fade. After 2016, Cruel Angel Thesis parodies would not be produced at the same rate. But don't be fooled. Cruel Angel Thesis isn't a dead meme, it's a dormant one. Every once in a while, a new Cruel Angel Thesis parody would pop up and get a similar amount of exposure to the ones from 2016. 2018 World Cup anime opening, June 13, 2018. Neon Genesis Evangelion, April 17, 2019. So I played Evangelion opening theme on church organ, November 17, 2019. Cruel Angel Thesis really had the best recipe for a long-lasting meme. In the process of researching this video, I made my own version of the meme to better understand the process of creation. And I have to say that it really made me visualize and appreciate the sheer amount of work that goes into one of these parodies. There's way more cutting and keyframing than what you'd expect for a 90-second video, and unlike me, most creators of these parodies cared about how the final product turned out. I dread to think about what it's like to actually draw all of the assets. But while the work that goes into these parodies is dreadful, it serves as a really interesting barrier. Cruel Angel Thesis parodies can only be made by those few people willing to put in the effort and the creativity. And because this meme's not being produced at an absurd rate, it can never really get stale. It has done what few memes can even hope to achieve and gained immortality. So the next time you see a Cruel Angel Thesis parody in your YouTube recommended, just remember how it became a meme. Wow, that was even worse than the first one.